2013, we were going to fire this kid because he had screwed something up royally, but we had to do like the whole process. So we were like, okay, well, we're going to put him on an action plan and start giving him training and, see if we can turn him around, which we ended up doing. But I said, hey, build that thing that I built at Quiznos. Like I needed a project for him, build that like audit platform I built at Quiznos, but let's build it for daily checklists. And so he did. And we threw it up on LinkedIn and Which Wich called. And they were like, hey, we want to buy this. And I'm like, well, it's kind of a thought experiment right now. And I was like, I could build it for you for like 60 grand. And they're like, nah. I'm Tommy Yionoulis, and I am one of the co-founders here at Ops Analytica.
This is Code Story, a podcast bringing you interviews with tech visionaries who share in the critical moments of what it takes to change an industry and build and lead a team that has your back. I'm your host, Noah Lampart, and today how Tommy Yionoulis created a unified way to view real-time data from multi-store locations. All this and more on Code Story. Tommy Yionoulis has a traditional tech founder story via hotel, restaurant, and stand-up comedy route. But in all seriousness, his dad was literally a rocket scientist, and his mom was a software engineer. Tommy diverted away from tech initially and did the restaurant thing before jumping headfirst into stand-up comedy, doing it for 10 years alongside several hospitality businesses. When I asked him to tell me a joke, he said his jokes weren't podcast ready. After he got tired of the lifestyle, he went back to school, got his MBA, met his wife, graduated, and started working for Quiznos. He's married with kids, and they live in Colorado, so he likes to cycle, paddleboard, and being outdoors with his family. He also likes a good cigar now and then. Tommy worked his way up and through the Quiznos organization, specifically landing in ops services. When Quiznos took a turn for the worst, he was tasked with figuring out audit reporting. Through his time there and through some consulting, he created a solution that got the attention of Which Wich and validated that the market wanted his solution. This is the creation story of Ops Analytica.
Ops Analytica is an operations management and analytics platform. So what that means is we focus on helping our clients manage and measure their daily team member operations, right? All those tasks that you need your team to do every single day to make sure you're ready, you're safe, and you can actually sell your products and services. And we primarily work in the restaurant space, but we have automotive, we're working in medical, we're branching out into pretty much large multi-location businesses. And so we help them make sure that their employees are sort of doing everything they need to do to be ready for that day or that shift. And then also we're capturing all of that data that, before really the invent of mobile technology was just this gigantic black hole of data, because you couldn't track, did this guy actually do this? You just kind of had to trust that they did. But now we can actually track what they did, and and then it just goes from there. And if they do something, they identify an issue, we can take them through a remediation process and get pictures and use Bluetooth devices. And it just keeps going into this whole data hole of how do we help these guys better manage and measure what's happening. And this product was really invented when I worked at Quiznos, or at least the first version of it was. So I don't know how familiar you are with Quiznos, a sandwich chain, but Quiznos is actually, I worked there in 08 and 09. And so I was right there at the top of the Quiznos implosion. And I didn't even know, I just showed up. I needed a job. I was out of grad school. And I was looking for a gig, and I got a job there. And then my first job there was franchise assistance program. So imagine Quiznos, one of the largest franchise implosions in history, at 2008 in the financial crisis. And I'm the guy you call and go, hey man, my business is failing. So I did that for the first 10 months I was there. Then we started to really downsize because we were losing a lot of restaurants. And so we had a major riff. and I made it through, and I got promoted, and I got into ops services. And when I was in ops services, I was called the RSC, like Restaurant Support Center Operations Leader, whatever. But I was there, and when they came to us and they were like, hey, you need to figure out how to report on all of these audits we're doing. We were out visiting restaurants. We had like 4,500 to 5,000 restaurants in that period. We were visiting them like every month, every 2 months, trying to gauge what was going on in the system. And so their idea was, well, why don't you and your assistant just type in an Excel, the results of, 4,500 audits a month and then report on it. And I was like, you guys are smoking crack. There's no way in hell I'm capable of doing this. You just fired everybody. We went from like 400 plus to like 80 people. I had like 100 unanswered emails every minute of the day in my inbox. I got to figure this out. But we didn't have any money. And so I ended up going to IT, and IT in perfect IT fashion was like, no, you can't do this. But I was like, I got to build something. Like, I can't like do this on my own. And so I found a program called Form Router, and it was like this online form builder. And this is like 08, 09. Like, these are Palm phones. These are Windows, those like little Windows mobile phones. Like, iPhones don't really, there's a generation 1 iPhones out, but nobody has one, And so I like figured out how to build this like online form and do all this and get it going. And they used it for years after that. But I got a little online form, and then I could download stuff into an Excel, and then we could get it into a SQL database, and then I could download it into an Excel. And so that was like our first audit platform at Quiznos. And so I did that. And then a buddy of mine from grad school, which is like the whole value of MBA school, is just getting good friends that do cool stuff. And this guy, Jason, was like, hey, man, you really enjoyed building that thing for Quiznos. And at that point, Quiznos was riffing people like every 2 to 3 weeks. Like, it was just like all the executives' doors would shut, and you'd be like, okay, who's getting fired today? And so it was an unstable place to work. And so my buddy was like, hey, look, there's this workflow platform called Semantic Workflow. And Semantic's like disbanded now. They've been gobbled up, but it's like the enterprise version of Norton Antivirus. They were huge. And so my buddy had worked on Semantic Workflow, and he was like, hey, Semantic's hiring me. And so there's an open position at this other company I used to work at, and you might be a good person, and they need someone to come in and do workflow. Would you be interested? So I go over to that company, right? And I don't realize at the time that they have like, 800,000 in debt, and they're basically going out of business. And so so we go in and start doing workflow consulting, and I start learning workflow. And then they're trying to sell the company, but it's like me, another buddy from grad school, and my current business partner, Eric. He's the sales guy. And they're like, okay, we're going to sell you guys. And we're like, well, you can't sell us. We're consultants. You don't have a product to sell. Like, we don't work there. Then you can't sell us. You got to let us buy you out. So they let us do an earn out. And so, I left Quiznos, and 3 months later, I own this new company called Wevo Group, and it was a workflow company. And we were in the Semantic Partner Channel. So even though we were like at the most, I think we had like 8 guys working there, our clients were like the World Bank and Comcast and Wells Fargo and Visa, because they would sell these huge deals in, and workflow was how they just said, oh, it doesn't do it out of the box, but you can do it with workflow. So we were custom business process consultants. And so that's how I got into development. But I don't know how to code, but I understand how software works. And so it's kind of like a WYSIWYG. I don't know if you're familiar with BPM products, but like workflow is like, if you go on Squarespace and you drag a picture on the screen, it writes HTML in the background. Workflow is kind of like you drag a component on the screen, and then you add the inputs and the outputs, and the component writes .NET in the background. So I don't know how to write .NET, but I know how to build software. I don't know how I know how to do that, but I do. So I just was able to do it. And so anyway, in 2013, we were going to fire this kid because he had screwed something up royally, but we had to do like the whole process. So we were like, okay, well, we're going to put him on an action plan and start giving him training and, see if we can turn him around, which we ended up doing. But I said, hey, build that thing that I built at Quiznos. Like, I needed a project for him. Build that like audit platform I built at Quiznos, but let's build it for daily checklists, and let's just see what we can do. And so he did. And we threw it up on LinkedIn, and Which Wich called. And they were like, hey, we want to buy this. And I'm like, well, it's kind of a video thought experiment right now. And I was like, I could build it for you for like 60 grand. And they're like, nah, we'll go buy this other one for like 5 grand. And I'm like, darn. But, that was my market validation. And so I was like, okay, maybe people want this. And I knew that it could be useful because I was a restaurant guy and worked in restaurants and been very successful in restaurants. So I was like, okay, we could probably, like, this is something that people need. And so then for like the next 18 months, nights and weekends, and this poor guy named Alan who worked for us, I kept that dude up relentlessly like 4 or 5 in the morning because I lived in Colorado and he lived in West Virginia, and he kept like, he was messing up the code, but I would just make him stay up all night and fix it. So like him and I were up like every night till like 2, 3 in the morning. And we basically spent like 12 months like after our day jobs building this thing out. And then I got like a beta version of it done like in March of 2014. I went to a family friend who was running 18 restaurants on the East Coast. And I said, can we put this in? And just, you guys are the beta client, let's figure it out. And we did. And we did 8 major releases in 8 months. And then at the end of 2014, my current business partner, Eric Traversland, who's a co-founder of Ops Analytica with me, there's some things were happening with Symantec and their support of our platform. And I was kind of burned out on like building new software all the time. SaaS was becoming a thing. And I was like, wouldn't it be great if we could just put all of our energy into one product versus trying to create a brand new, fully fledged solution every 6 months for these clients? So we ended up deciding to end that company and start Ops Analytica. And so we had, because I know one of the questions you're going to get into is about MVPs. We had an MVP, which was what we had built on workflow. So we went out and we recruited a couple of developers to come in on a sweat equity deal. And our developer came on because we had an MVP already. We had something we could start selling today. So he was like, yeah, I get asked to do this all the time, but you guys already have something, so why not?
Well, let's jump into the MVP then. So that first product you built, how long did it take you to build? And you kind of already talked about that, but I'm curious is, what sort of tools outside of what you've talked with workflow and the things like that you use to bring it to life?
So with the workflow platform, what it was Windows based. So you needed a Windows server to run it on, and then you had the product, and then you could connect it to different databases. And I was most familiar with SQL, so we had a SQL backend. And so in that first version, that MVP version, was essentially what we had built, at when we owned the other company, and it was just there. And then immediately, our developer was like, yeah, we got to get this thing off workflow. So he started coding our app. So really, we were only on our MVP version of the platform for about the first 6 months of having the business. And so he started working on building a front end app. And so I would look at that as our subversion. That's like -1 would be that version. And that was really just there so that if we could get a demo with somebody or try to get a meeting, we have something to show them, hey, we have a product. We could actually do this. And at the point when we started in January of 15, we had like one client paying us $30 a month. And then we had like another restaurant chain that got to use it for free because they were our beta clients. So we just like, you just use it and keep using it. So we really stopped development on that version, and we were just kind of doing everything else in the business, right? Trying to drum up sales and learn how to internet market and all these other things. It was just kind of there as our demo platform. So then when version 1 came out of our platform, it was our new app. So it was the Ops Analytica app, which was how we did the checklists, right? And but then we paired it with another workflow backend. So the guys who had built workflow, they had sold it to Symantec. This is kind of a funny story. So while the guy was on his non-compete, he took the money that he got and started a new company called Decisions. And so he started with his own pocket money, started having Decisions built while he was on his non-compete, so that the day his non-compete was over with Symantec, Decisions launched its workflow platform. So he basically had a 3-year, ramp up time where he was building his next platform. So we had a back end, which was on Decisions, which was another workflow platform. So we had a front end app and a back end Decisions. And the reason why we did it on another workflow platform was because this one was web-based, but also because workflow comes with task management, it comes with reporting, it comes with user management, location management, like all these things that you would have to code yourself that take months and months to code already existed there, and you can connect to APIs. So what we did was we had an app that you could capture data from, a mobile app, but then all that was going into a SQL database, and all of the back-end management of the platform was done in this workflow platform. So it was a really super fast way to develop the platform. And like all the admin stuff, like I ended up learning Decisions and building that out while my developer was coding just the front end stuff. So really for that first, I guess we started in June of 2015 is when we launched the first version of Ops Analytica. Through 2017, we were on Decisions backend and then our own code for our app. And that wasn't super uncommon then, that you had both like a front end and a back end. You know what I mean? Like you had a web portal for reporting and all that, but then you had a front end app. But then we very quickly realized after about a year of being on the Decisions platform that it just didn't look and feel like a cohesive thing. So probably after the first year, we said, hey, look, we really need to code this whole thing out ourselves. So then we did a big 7-month lift to get the back end built out to get us to our current version of the app where everything is our native code. We have our app and then we have a database. From there, and we run our own code set, and we're a web app, right? So you get the same experience on Android as you would on your desktop, as you would on iOS, though and this is my big complaint, we have to have an iOS app because, and I'm all Apple, by the way, everything I own is Apple, but they are the worst people in the world to develop for, and they don't want you to do anything that they don't have complete control over. And so we have to have an iOS app so we can connect to Bluetooth and stuff. But but it's all the same experience. It's a shell that displays the website and then allows us to attach to things like Bluetooth and messaging and whatnot.
So you got your MVP, right? Tell me about how you progressed the product from there, how you shaped it and matured it. And I think to put that in a box, I'm curious how you built your roadmap and decided, okay, this is the next most important thing to build.
What happens is, in a bubble, right? If we all lived in a vacuum, right? Like communism, what does Homer Simpson say? Marge, communism works, in theory. But so in theory, you would build your app perfectly from day one. You would build out each module to completion, and you would always have a fully finished product, and you wouldn't need to release anything because, in some dream world. But in the real world, what happens is you have an idea of what you want to do. And it's just that analogy about a battle. Everybody's got a great plan until the first bullet's fired. And then all of a sudden it all goes out the window. And what ends up happening is that customers and competitors drive your roadmap. And so I've always, there are things that we have today that still aren't done from the original 5-page Word doc I gave our developer in 2014, we still don't have that feature. And then other features we have that are 10,000 times better than I could have ever imagined them being. You know what I mean? But so you start off building this thing and you're going, okay, well, we got to get this done. And we got to get this module done or this part, we got to have the checklists, but then we got to have and then all of a sudden you're doing a demo and they're well, your reports suck. Where are your reports? Or it's generally either you lose a big deal or every demo you do, the customers are asking you for something, or, a competitor, you lose a deal, or you hear in demos, your competitor's got this way better than you. And so, all of a sudden then you're well, shoot, we can't sell until we get some reports, or we don't have tasks yet, or, we need more of this or less of that. And so then you start going, okay, well, we need to get like an MVP reporting module out. So just minimum viable, how many reports do we have to say we have reports, so that in demos we can say, oh, these are our reports, you know? And so then you go and you build out like enough of a reporting module for that period of time that you don't get laughed out of the demos as you're trying to sell. And then you stop and then you go, okay, well, now we need rules. So then go work on the rule thing for a while. Oh, now we need tasks. And so you start building all these different modules out of your platform, and they're all like anywhere from like, let's say like they work, but they might be anywhere from 30 to 80% actually done, but they're done enough for that period of time. And we sort of like, so we have like this overarching goal of where we want the platform to be, but we have all these like little like juts and starts and right turns and left turns. Like it's not a straight line. It's just backfilling in what we need to be able to actually sell and compete in the space. And so we did that for like, you know, I mean, we did that really through, let's say 2019. So for like 5 years, we were just getting enough of something out there to say we have it. But there's a lot of things that like weren't done, you know, like as done as we want them to be. They work, but they're not like the full vision of what that module or what that like little part of the platform should be. And for us, it was really dictated by winning deals, because we bootstrapped this thing and we don't have any debt and we don't have any investment. And we have just been running this thing ourselves from day one. And so, you know, we just didn't ever have like, you know, $1 million to throw at a problem. You know what I mean? We just had to like, you know, which is what you get when you raise money. You give away all this freedom and like all this equity, but then someone just hands you a bunch of money and you can just go, hey, build that out to fruition, you know? And so we were kind of bouncing around, backfilling in features that we just needed to win deals and to get through demos without having to say no too much. Because every time you have to say no in a demo, people lock in on that. And then they just get it in the back of their head that, you know, this doesn't work or whatever. So, and so we really were doing that through 2020, just, you know, adding features and functionality, getting it to like a point where it worked and we could sell off of it. And then in 2020, we really said, okay, look, we've got to go through and just like start finishing some of this stuff out and bringing it to its fruition so that it can add the maximum amount of value. And so that's sort of, we brought our roadmap back to, okay, let's just take what we have today and make it awesome and keep doing that on all these different things that we've started, you know, in the platform.
This episode is sponsored by Vanta. You're a startup founder. Finding product market fit is probably your number one priority. But to land bigger customers, you also need security compliance. And obtaining your SOC 2 or ISO 27001 certification can open those big doors. But they take time and energy pulling you away from building and shipping. And that's where Vanta comes in. Vanta is the all-in-one compliance solution helping startups like yours get audit ready and build a strong security foundation quickly and painlessly. How, you ask? Vanta automates the manual security tasks that slow you down, helping you streamline your audit. And the platform connects you with trusted vCISOs to build your program, auditors to get you through audits quickly, and a marketplace for essentials like pen testing. Join over 8,000 companies, including many Y Combinator and Techstars startups who trust Vanta. Simplify compliance and get $1,000 off at vanta.com/codestory. That's vanta.com/codestory. This episode is sponsored by Kinsta. Between juggling client meetings, managing your website, and keeping up with everyday tasks, who has the time to stress out about website security? Well, with Kinsta, the technical stuff is taken care of, so you can focus on what you do best. Kinsta provides managed hosting for WordPress, offering lightning-fast load times, top-tier security, and unmatched human-only customer support. Whether you're a business owner, web developer, or running a digital agency, Kinsta makes managing your website easy and efficient. Kinsta provides enterprise-grade security, being one of the few hosting providers for WordPress with SOC 2 and other certifications, guaranteeing the highest level of security for your website. Thanks to their unlimited free expert-led migrations, Kinsta ensures a smooth transition for you from other hosting providers. Customers have reported 200% faster load times post-migration to their platform. What I find cool about Kinsta is their fast and reliable customer service and premium features that are included at no extra cost. Ready to experience Kinsta's hosting for yourself? Get your first month free when you sign up at kinsta.com today. That's KINSTA.com. I keep hearing you say we, and it's a perfect segue into my next question then. So tell me about team. So how did you go about building your team? And I'm interested in what you looked for in those people to indicate they were the winning horses to join you.
My business partner, Eric, and I, he and I have been working together since 2009, right? Like we started Wevo together. Personality-wise, we get along really, really well. And I think we backfill each other. Like I'm more, I would say, on the creative side of things. And so I'm more like the creative and he's more detail oriented. Like he is like an accounting major and I am a, hotel, restaurant and comedy major. So so we have complementary skill sets and he does a really good job of bringing me back to reality sometimes, which we need because, I can get very why wouldn't you do that? And he's got to be like, dude, no one's going to actually, if it doesn't solve a problem, no one's going to buy it. Stop. And so it's like a good mix. And we get along really well and we've been together for years. And then we have two other partners but they are like silent partners with sweat equity, basically. So Eric and I, because we were shutting down our other company, right when we started Ops Analytica, we had cash. So we had money. And so we basically said, look, we'll front all the money for this thing. We will use our MVP product, and all you need to do is help us build out your part of the software, and you will earn equity in the business when it sells. It's basically the deals we made with our other two guys. So we brought in a SQL guy who was my SQL guy at Quiznos and has been like a buddy of mine since Quiznos. And then we found a developer through a mutual friend of ours who had worked at Decisions. He lives up in North Minnesota. And he didn't want to travel anymore, and and thank God for him. His name's Chad, and he's our head of development. And so there's different levels of developer. There is the guy that you say, hey, I need a rule builder, and they go, cool, and they go build you a rule builder that's scalable, that works great, that has its own coding language that we developed. And then there's a guy you go, I need a rule builder. And he goes, okay, give me 400 pages of Word document that explains every part of a rule builder to me, and I'll be happy to code it for you. And thank God we got the first type of guy because we wouldn't have a product today if we didn't, because I just wasn't capable of writing those kinds of detailed specs for people. I just needed to give them bullet points and say, hey, this is what we need to do. Go figure it out. And, the way we structured our business was one of the ways one of my cigar buddies had structured another company. And he explained it to me, you give people equity and you have them work for sweat equity, but then you give them some and they will work so much, they will do such a better job than if you just try to pay them, If you just pay them, you'll run out of cash because it's a different relationship. And I just think the way we set up the company where we gave people equity and the deal was you got to maintain this, right? You got to get your equity. You have to do your part of the job, which in this case was build us this platform. And then you got to maintain it until the company sells it. That was the deal. You build the code, get it done, and then you have to maintain it. And if you do those two things, then eventually when the company sells, you'll get a payout on that deal. That's how we structured the business with our initial group of guys, the 4 guys that started. But Chad never left. He just came on as he built out the platform. He was technically done, but then we gave him a job, as we started to grow. And then he's just been on ever since, And so we got a recommendation from a friend that we trusted. That's how we got in. And, that's always been how I've built both these companies, was just I got recommendations from people I trusted.
That's awesome. That sounds super cool. It sounds like you found some really awesome people who not only believed what you were doing, but willing to put skin in the game to help you deliver it.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Chad worked for a year with no pay, full time. Like, he was in a position to do it. Luckily, too, so like Eric and I, we have wives that are very successful. Like, there wouldn't be an Apps Analytica today without our wives, because like his wife's like a huge Salesforce person. She's like, crazy good at Salesforce. My wife's a financial advisor. So like together, like our wives, like really, like they kept this company going because we were able to work when there was no revenue, when, you know what I mean? Like when it was tough. And then these other guys put their time in. Chad did full time, and this other guy, Will, he did it at nights and weekends because he had a day job. But like, they put their time in and they earned their equity in the business,
Let's flip to scalability. So did you build this to scale efficiently from day one, or are you fighting this as you grew? And I kind of know where you're going to go, but I'm excited to see where you go with it.
We're so scalable. And because, and there's been times where like I've wanted to deviate and do other things, and Chad sort of had to talk me back on it. Like, I got really enamored with Azure about 2 years ago, and I was like, we just got to do everything Azure, man. Like, why would we recreate the wheel? And in the future, I might choose to go AWS or Azure and build an app from scratch on one of those platforms and just see if you could take all those different pieces and get them to connect together really easily and quickly to build something really fast. But we use a Windows environment and we use SQL, and we are so infinitely scalable because of that. Because if our hosting got a little wonky, and we just were able to move to new hosting, and it wasn't like hard, you know what I mean? And there's nothing more tried and true in this world than a Windows server and a SQL database. Like, it's just, it's bulletproof. And so in that respect, from an infrastructure perspective, like, I'm very happy with those choices. They're not sexy, but like they work amazingly well, and you can move. The portability of them is insanity. And so that's really worth it. And then from a scalability perspective, the biggest lift in coding, right, is 1 to 2. And, because 2 to 1 million is just RAM and processor speed and somewhere to store stuff. But like 1 to 2 is hard. But when you have a developer who is not just an employee who's under a deadline and, under like, hey, just get this done as quick as possible, as cheap as possible, but is actually like an owner and it sees an out for themselves, then they code in a way where, where we built things to go 2 and above, right? They're variable in nature for the most part. We obviously had to hard code in some things. There are some sort of this, solid things in the system that are like locked down. But like for the most part, we really did focus on, how can we handle more, and how can we handle, more variability. And one of our biggest features is our rule builder, our business logic builder. And it's our biggest differentiator. It helps us win more deals than anything else. And we have our own language that we can write these rules in. And it's like this amazing thing. And it helps us win the majority of our business, is what we can do within our platform, because we have this variable nature, scalable aspect to our platform.
Well, as you step out on the balcony and you look across all you've built, what are you most proud of?
You tell people at a cocktail party, like, what do you do? And they go, well, I have an app. And they're like, okay, really? You have an app? Okay. You know what I mean? And like, then they find out like who our clients are, and like, and it's like, I think I'm most proud of the fact that our app just works really, really, really well. It's to the point now where like, if we get 6 support tickets in a day, we start freaking out, because that's like so many more than we normally have. Like our churn is like our churn is like unheardedly low. Like probably, I don't like to say anything out loud, but it's like less than 1%, and like, I'm knocking on like some wood furniture right now because I don't want to jinx myself. But like, we just have built such a solid platform, and it's being used in like 19 countries by so many people every day that like it has to be solid, and it just works really well. And like, I'm just so proud of that thing, that like our customers, like when we have the right customer fit and they're capable of like implementing the technology, they can be successful with it. And it's so neat to watch them do stuff that you couldn't even imagine people doing, you know? Like, it's just, that's what I'm proud of. I'm proud of like how solid the platform is. And it needs to be, because we don't have the team to support if it was bad. You know what I mean? Like, we don't have 50 guys sitting around on chat all day long, banging out support tickets. Like, you know, we couldn't afford to do that. If the platform didn't run well, we would be in real trouble. So I'm just proud that it actually does what it's supposed to do well.
Well, let's flip the script a little bit. Tell me about a mistake you made and how you and your team responded to it.
I think the biggest mistakes we made weren't on the tech side so much. I think they were more like on the marketing and the sales side. So, and I totally own this, by the way. So I'm a restaurant guy, like, and I understand restaurants. And like, when we launched the platform, I think this is like an interesting thing because it's on the business side. But when we launched the platform, we hired like this professional, like copywriter that we knew to write these blogs. And our original messaging was operations data, right? You got to have operations data, just like you have to have POS data, and you have to have inventory data and all these other data sources that people in companies use every single day to make better data-driven decisions. Our point was, well, you got to do the same thing with operations data, right? And so we came out with all these really well-written blogs that were kind of our statement to the world about ops data, and you got to have it, and you know, Moneyball for restaurants and all these things, you know. And that messaging fell flat on its face. No one gave a crap. And it was horrible. And it was like, because I just had such high expectations of like, you know, by like a year into this, we'll be making money and it'll be cool. You know what I mean? And that didn't end up happening. And so, but then what we did was, because I felt like I had such a understanding of the marketplace, right? And then we also got sucked into all these, reading all these books on like marketing and 80/20 and, you know, all these internet marketing things. You know, if you ever read about a brand's got to stand for something, right? And so then for like literally the next 5 years, right, the first 5 years of the company, we told people we tried to tell people what their problems were and how our platform would solve it, because that simplifies your marketing. You know what I mean? It's very easy to go like, you know, paper's your problem. Lazy employees are your problem. Food safety is your problem. And that's fine. But then when you actually talk to people, if that's not their problem, then they just don't think your platform can help them. So for 5 years, we told everybody what their problem was. And then in 2019, we had a really good sales year, and we closed our first big enterprise level clients. And I was interviewing one of those enterprise clients like right before COVID happened, like March of 2020. And I was talking to him, and he told me, he was like, you help us identify the problems we didn't even know we had, and you keep us from making $1 million mistakes. Like that came out in this interview with this new customer. And he gave us an example of how they were like trying to solve this problem and the path they went down, and how they used us to actually figure out what the real problem was, and how it saved them a ton of money because they were going to go down a path where they were going to hire more people to like backfill like this whole issue they're having. Anyway, it was that tweak. You help us identify these operational problems that we didn't even know we had, which was only like really like 2 degrees off of, you need operations data to run better operations, right? But the difference was, we're not telling you what your problem is. We're telling you we have a way for you to figure out what your problems are and solve your current problems. And they're your problems, and you already know what they are. We don't need to tell you what they are. You know what they are. You're dealing with them right now based on your culture, based on the complexity of your operations, based on how much training you have, on the quality of your leadership, all these things. You're right. You have these issues, and our platform can be here as something that can help you identify and solve those issues. And so the biggest mistake we made wasn't, I don't think, technological so much as it was just, and I put it on me. I was following all those books and I was relying on my expertise in this industry when I should have been, really focusing more on how do we help these guys solve their problems, because they're all different. Because, you go look at an industry and at a 30,000 foot level, they're all the same. They all do the same thing, restaurants, whatever, oil change places. It doesn't matter. But then when you dive into the nitty gritty, they have different actual issues they're dealing with, for whatever reason. Their system's different, their process is different, they're different technologies. So that was the biggest issue, I think, that we had as a company, was just really understanding what our value prop was and how to communicate it in a way that resonated with customers.
So what does the future look like for Ops Analytica, the product, and for your team?
Last year, so it was really just the core guys for the first couple of years, and then we hired our first sales guy in 2018, and then this last year we hired some more implementation people. This year we've already hired another salesperson, and we're hiring some more implementation and developers. So we are starting to grow. We're over the hump, I would say. We're over the first major milestone of a startup, in that now we're, like I said, we're bootstrapped. So we are generating enough revenue on our own, and we're good enough now at selling the platform that we are able to fuel our own team growth and grow our business from there, which is just so exciting to be at that point. So from a team perspective, it's just growth. We just want to hire we want to bring on sales guys. Our goal is that they're paying for themselves within the first 6 months. And then as soon as they're paying for themselves, we just want to get another sales guy in and just keep expanding out into different verticals, because there's nothing about our platform that's restaurant specific. It can work in any vertical that you have employees out in the field doing repetitive tasks and checklists. And then from a software perspective, what we're really trying to do right now is we have all these cool modules and different things. We really just want to get every part of the platform as efficient and really deliver value with each module in the platform for the large enterprise clients. So we're really just focusing, I think, right now internally on how do we get the platform to version 3. Everything's been version 2 for the last couple of years. I want to get to version 3, which is then we start adding a bunch of new functionality, new and better stuff. But I want to get everything that we currently have just completely done and awesome and adding value before we start throwing more on top of that. And looking at in the future for us, it's going to be being able to hook into more data sources, whether those data sources be sensors, whether they be wearables, whether they be AI, whether we're combing the web for data, and just sort of becoming more and more of an analytics hub that can also take action. Because that's something that's unique about our platform too. We're an analytics platform, but we're not like Microsoft BI, because we have to provide the ability for people to actually enter data into the system and then also analyze the data. So we're not just analyzing the data, we have the whole data entry part is ours as well. And that makes us unique and gives us a lot of capability that other people don't have. I can, just as an example, I can tell you if a checklist was accurate or not when it's being collected. So then when you go to do analytics, you don't have to scrub the raw data. You can literally push one button and just see accurate data or inaccurate data, which both have value, right? Accurate data is good for making decisions. Inaccurate data is really good for going, hey, we have to coach these team members on doing this correctly because this stuff's not correct. So we have both sides. We're the data collection tool and the analytics tool.
Well, let's switch to you, Tommy. Who influences the way that you work? Name a person that you look up to and why.
My mom was a workaholic, and I think I got a lot of her. So for better or for worse, for my wife and my kids, I am much more like my mom, who was a total workaholic. And then I also think like from a personality trait, whether it was stand-up comedy or owning these companies or I just have like I'm like a boxer, the horse and animal story, like just work harder, like I just don't, I think I just want to be, I don't like confrontation, so I never want to be called out on not doing my best. And so I think that just like that and the workaholic gene just drives me to like keep going and going and going. And so probably one of the hardest things I've had to learn over the last couple of years is that work-life balance, because, you got to be there for your family or your kids, especially when, they're young, they need you. So that's probably it.
Well, we talked about a mistake earlier, but a little bit different spin. If you could go back to the beginning, what would you do differently, or where would you consider taking a different approach?
From a technical perspective, I probably, though being on that workflow platform decisions allowed us to get something out to the marketplace faster. But I think if I could do it again, I would have tried to code our own thing faster, because we were really hamstrung by having a sort of what felt like a disjointed platform. That idea of having a front end app and then a website that was completely different, that was like okay in like the late 2000s, but once you cross 2010, people just kind of expected a consolidated platform, if you will. You know what I mean? And it was very weird to demo that platform. And it made it really hard to get people excited, even though the reality is that it didn't affect them because they were getting emailed reports and all of these things. And they never really had to go into that platform. So at the beginning, but still it was weird and people didn't like it. The other thing that I would tell you that has been another mistake is that we have made some decisions development wise. And this is one of the most frustrating things about being a founder too. We know, for instance, that people get burned out on notifications, right? I get up every morning and I have 10 automated emails in my inbox that I delete every single day. I never look at them. They're there and I delete them every day. And there have been some things where we have said, hey, look, we do exceptions this way, or we do notifications this way. And they're right, by the way. Like, we only tell you when there's something wrong. You're not going to just blow up your inbox with stuff that's right. Like, that doesn't make any sense. You're going to ignore it. And yet we fight that. I think we're absolutely correct in that, like, that makes more sense. And like, it's just dumb to send people stuff that they're going to delete. But yet there's been several things like that where we have dug our heels in and said, no, we're not doing it. And it has cost us dearly, and we should just shut up and do it the way they want it so that they sign on and just let them turn it off and know that they're going to turn it off. And it's just one of those paradoxes of development that people still want to manage everything out of their inbox. You know what I mean? And there's been a couple of things like that where we kind of dug in and put our foot down for years and then finally just said, no, we'll just do it the way you want it. And it just cleared so much friction out of our lives.
Well, last question, Tommy. So you're getting on a plane and you're sitting next to a young entrepreneur who's built the next big thing. They're jazzed about it. They can't wait to show it off to the world. Can't wait to show it off to you right there on the plane. What advice do you give that person having gone down this road a bit?
I would say, having been from a bootstrap startup, we didn't really start to figure things out for 3 to 5 years. Like it took us it was like 3 to 5 years before we really started to figure things out. And our platform got to a point where it was really sort of marketable and sellable. And I would say that if you can afford to, and you're not mortgaging your future and you're not putting yourself and your grandkids in debt, but if you're making incremental progress, the platform's getting better, you're adding sales, even if it feels like they're glacially slow at some points, and you're delivering value to customers, to just stick with it, because everything takes longer than you think it's going to take. 2, 3, 4, 5 times longer some points, and it's just keep battling. You're going to get kicked in the face, and just feel it for the day, and then get up tomorrow morning and go, okay, why did I just get kicked in the face on that deal? Why did we lose that deal? Why did we lose this to a competitor? What do we got to do to fix it? And just get back to work, because these things are, these apps, these platforms are, it's just consistently executing and getting things better, and nothing's like stagnant. You can always make everything better. You can always iterate through it. Just don't give up, because there were times when I should have given up, for sure, for like a million reasons, and I just refused to do it. And and now, we're 7 years into this thing, but now we're like in a really good spot. There were a lot of times when we just got punched in the face, and we just had to keep going. And thank God we did, right? Because now we're here today. But man, it would have been easy to quit. It would have been easy, to go get a job that paid $150,000, $200,000 and health insurance and all that stuff, But I just thank God we kept going, because you will eventually get over the hump.
That's great advice. Well, Tommy, thank you for being on the show today. Thank you for telling the creation story of Ops Analytica.
Oh, you're so welcome, man. I really appreciate this. It was wonderful to be on the show.
And this concludes another chapter of Code Story. Code Story is hosted and produced by Noah Labhart. Be sure to subscribe on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or the podcasting app of your choice. Support the show on patreon.com/codestory for just $5 to $10 a month. And when you get a chance, leave us a review. Both things help us out tremendously. And thanks again for listening.
Life can be chaotic. If you're running a retail business, don't let disorganized order fulfillment add to the chaos. Use ShipStation instead. With ShipStation, you never have to worry about shipping and fulfillment again. Whether you're running a business out of your garage or you have multiple warehouses, ShipStation is ideal for every phase of your business's growth. Save time with one login for all your stores and by automating repetitive tasks. Plus, you'll save money with the best shipping rates from global carriers. ShipStation's industry-leading features help you deliver a better customer experience. They'll get accurate and faster shipments along with automated tracking updates with your branding. And with up to 88% off UPS and USPS rates and up to 90% off FedEx rates, ShipStation is the fastest and most affordable way to ship. Calm the chaos. Switch to ShipStation today. Start a free trial at shipstation.com/audio. That's shipstation.com/audio.
You just realized your business needed to hire someone yesterday. How can you find amazing candidates fast? Easy. Just use Indeed. Stop struggling to get your job post seen on other job sites. With Indeed sponsored jobs, your post jumps to the top of the page for your relevant candidates, so you can reach the people you want faster. According to Indeed data, sponsored jobs posted directly on Indeed have 45% more applications than non-sponsored jobs. Don't wait any longer. Speed up your hiring right now with Indeed. And listeners of this show will get a $75 sponsored job credit to get your jobs more visibility at Indeed.com/PODKATZ12. Just go to Indeed.com/PODKATZ12 right now and support our show by saying you heard about Indeed on this podcast. Terms and conditions apply. Hiring? Indeed is all you need.